Today is April 28th. It's the Policy Advisory Committee. We'll start with attendance, go around the room, who's here. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Andrew Hennies, attorney for the committee.
Gwendolyn Peel, attorney for the committee.
Kenny Dula, superintendent.
Erin Earl, school committee chair.
Jennifer Lima, school committee member. Doesn't look like there is anybody here for citizens' comments. Did everybody have the opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Andrew, that door's open, like the outside door?
I did.
Right, perfect.
Okay, it was proper, we could,
Yep.
Perfect.
let me go check it out, just to make sure.
It's okay.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So, in an attempt to get ahead of some of the policies that RIDE requires us to at least look at on an annual basis, there's a couple on here.
Jen, does Gwen have access to the folder? Yeah.
Yes,
You
okay.
do? Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
perfect. To be looked at, and we still have one on here that we should have looked at from last year. So 3 of the policies on the agenda, actually 4 of them, the HIV, the sun safety, the suicide prevention, and the transgender are policies that need to be looked at and reviewed on an annual basis. So I thought that we would go through those first. Ken, do you have a preference on?
No, we can just go right in order.
Okay, I was gonna say the HIV is, like I said, we've had that on since last year, so I thought we would start with that.
I thought you were gonna
first.
say it's an easy one and I was
No,
going to yell at you.
no, it's been on here for almost a year, so it is most definitely not easy.
I remember talking about it, yeah.
Yeah, Colleen had come, and I asked her just because we had it had been a while since we had reviewed it, and I asked her just to take another look at it to make sure that the draft that's in here now is kind of, in line with what we had initially started talking about.
Which version?
Last year. So go into the one that says, proposed HIV 11/9/2024
Yep.
was last modified by Colleen at 9:30 this morning.
Perfect.
So last time we talked about it in this committee was back in October, November timeframe. And this is to comply with the statutory requirements. And it's just basically,
Can you remind me, why did we get stuck? Like I remember we worked about it, I remember we talked about it, I remember we were horrified by some of the language, I remember we updated that language, but why didn't it go to the school committee? I can't remember.
it was, why did we stop? We stopped because we were questioning why, I think it was, I don't remember, to be honest with you.
I can look back in my notes.
We updated the language to be much more
Current?
Current is a good word for it. And we had talked about kind of how we were working. I think we had stopped because we wanted to make sure what we were doing in terms of curriculum was in keeping with what we were supposed to be doing, and we wanted to make sure we were documenting that appropriately within the policy. I think that's where we had kind of stopped.
Okay. So did we get those answers? Is that what Colleen was doing?
Yeah, this is, we had, and then I think we just, once we got that in there, we just never circled back to it after
Got it.
that. Cause the last time we looked at it here was in October.
Mhm. Can you give me edit access?
So,
This is a silly question, but under the what is HIV and AIDS section, there's things that are underlined. Are they links? One, it looks
Yeah,
like
there are links.
I feel like that's bad in a policy. Do we normally do that?
No, we can unlink, we can unlink those and underline those.
Yeah, you've identified the source below
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I feel like that is just better
Yeah.
because then it won't get weird.
I'll make a note.
I mean, I'll do it for you right now if you want.
I'll just make the note. And Ken, is the staff trained on this every year, right? Universal precautions?
Yeah,
and-
this would be one of the policies that review among bloodborne passages.
Okay.
Where does universal precautions defined? Like, I know, I understand what Ken's saying, but like, is that in a different policy somewhere? Is that?
We do have a bloodborne pathogens policy.
Cause if not, we could just use the CDC's definition and put it in, or reference that other one.
We have what I'm wondering if it is. There's no definition in there. I don't think it is defined.
There is documentation for it, it's 1988 from the CDC.
Did you say 1988?
You must
Yeah,
have already did.
Yep, that's, let me stop myself before I
What
got
do we,
excited.
when we're doing the training for the staff, do you know what we use?
I'd have to go back looking at the resources that we have, cause we use a video along with like a small pamphlet
Yep.
as a resource, so, I don't know how I can't tell you right now how it's defined. But
No, that's
would
okay, I
look
just
at
was
that.
thinking to be consistent.
Okay, so I went back to when we originally started talking about this, and that adding that phrase came from Colleen. She added such as practicing universal precautions, but she didn't link to where that came from, so that must be just like I'm guessing a standard phrase,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
she didn't give me
It does, and it seems to extend beyond, that's, like I'm looking right now at the National Library of Medicine, 23, updated in 25, and there's a standard outline of universal precautions.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, I know what it is as a person who's been trained on it, but like, I don't know if it's just like, a parent reading this would know what that meant, that's all, so I think even just throwing in, even if it was from 1988, like just throwing in the CDC's definition of it is good enough, in my opinion.
Alright, I'll send you both, Jen.
okay.
I'll just set a note for you. Andrew, there's a sentence in here under persons who may need to know. It says, the decision to inform any personnel should be made by the superintendent of schools in coordination with the school nurse, teacher, and school physician, along with the HIV positive employee or student, parent, guardian, and the HIV positive person's physician. Such action to inform must be accompanied by a signed release of information. Where would that signed release, like, should that signed release be?
Nurse.
The nurse has something like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's just like a standard
Yes.
signed release thing?
Yep.
Alright, perfect.
Yep.
So Jen, did we determine for the dissemination that we were still gonna post this in the policy in the faculty rooms? Is that still a requirement?
That is, I think,
Set by state, whatever.
that was not removed by Colleen, so I don't know whether that's the current practice or,
Yeah, but would it be just for this one for this policy, getting it, posting it, but that's not something we typically do with all policies.
No, that would be wacky because there's a million. But it just says dissemination. This policy should be distributed annually through the minimum of the following school methods: inclusion in the school committee policy manual and family/student handbooks, which I could bet money that it's probably not in those. Posting in all faculty rooms and inclusion in staff in-service training, which it is done-ish.
that is what's in the that is in the current policy, so in theory, that is how
Yeah,
it
no, I
should be.
understand
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But we're looking at it to see if that still makes sense and if that is how we would want it disseminated. Cause it literally says the policy should.
I mean, like, in my mind, like, I know, like, in my workplace, there's, like, all sorts of policies posted in the break room
Yep.
that relate to your federal rights and protections, and this seems like it's one of those.
So this is referred to in the student handbook.
In all of
The
it?
policies not in this, is PCNK school committee policies, it lists JLCCA, GVGA, located on our website to view additional information on HIV infection,
That's great.
so.
But is it in the faculty or is it in the faculty break
I
rooms?
don't-
It might be.
Okay.
I guess the question is is that something we wanna keep in? It sounds like yes.
I think so.
Okay.
I think this is one of those ones.
Yeah.
like,
So
I
once
know
we
your
vote on
rights
it, we'll
one.
just wanna make
Yeah.
sure that we're in there compliance with it. But we might, I mean, it could very well, just like you said, like in your break room, having different things.
Mhm.
This one might be that. I also think, you know how we talked about having like a Google sheet of like policies we wanna look at annually?
Mhm.
Maybe adding a column of like where it
Posted.
needs to be publicly posted could be really
Mm-hmm.
helpful for changing administrations and school
Yeah.
committees, cause that one would have been one that would not have popped in my brain to even
Okay.
look at. Andrew, on the page 3, the right to appeal. Is that normal?
Yeah, I mean, that, it's not nearly as detailed, but there's a process to appeal under FERPA or HIPAA, which would be the opportunity to seek, make a written amendment to the record, so,
Okay.
Yep.
So good enough?
yep, we covered.
Anything else, Ken, that you want?
No, I don't see anything else that needs to be added or changed.
I'll make a motion to move it forward to the school committee
Okay.
with
the changes.
with
that
slight
we
changes.
discussed, Yeah.
And
Ken, are you good with that?
Yes,
You want a second it?
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the next one up is, I'm gonna skip tobacco because that's not one of the red ones, and I'm gonna move on to sun safety. And this one, if you go into there's only one draft in there, the red line.
Mhm.
This was a new policy that was created for the first time in 2022. So this is the first time we've looked at it since it was created. And again, Colleen reviewed it today, and she just had two suggestions, one of which is already in here. It's to insert the paragraph that says sunscreen is best applied at home. And then her other, well, she had one comment, but we have the form in here, we have since moved to keeping the forms like not in the policy.
Mhm.
So I wanted to say, should we move the form out of the policy? And
I
just,
thought we did keep forms in policy.
the
Am I
only
listening?
one that we have it in is the weapons one, and I can't remember why we kept it in there, but all the other ones, we don't put the form because form's more like procedural, and that gives the administration the ability to change the form as needed for them.
Yeah, that we did.
That sounds more normal. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we should just reference where the form
Yeah, I
can be
think that's
found in the
that's where we
policy.
compromised on that, yeah.
But Ken, the thing that she had suggested was, right now, there's like a checkbox that you have to fill out on the form, and her recommendation was to remove the checkbox and just say by signing this form. That way,
There's no confusion.
There's
what they're
no
checking off
confusion,
is the
right.
first
so I can
opportunity.
send you that since we're gonna take the form out of the policy.
Do you know, does it say it later what state regulation it is?
It should say it.
Cause we referenced it like a couple times and I haven't hit which one it is.
So, Jen, I'll just copy this and put it into another document, the form
Okay.
part.
And I'll send you the exact language. No, it does not, but I will add that.
Find it right
She had something specific she wanted in there, and to remove the middle section where the,
She just wanted it to say like
Choices
by
are-
signing this,
Mhm.
I'm whatever, instead of the two.
but she had specific,
She's just
Right,
saying, I
what's
think
the
the clause, by checking this box, you confirm that you understand. She said it should be a statement in the document that states, by signing this permission, you understand the school is not responsible for ensuring that the sunscreen is applied by the student.
Why isn't this just a thing in Aspen?
I think state regulations require us to have a policy.
No, I know
Oh.
we need a policy, I'm saying the form.
I don't know.
Wouldn't that just be?
it could be, I'm reading it now just to make sure it's nothing.
Jen, I just sent you the statute.
Thank you. So do we
Yeah, we can
need,
just, I would say remove the form, because the information that's on this form is in the policy, as far as what the guidelines are of what can be used in the school. It states in here that the school department may rescind or restrict the use of the sunscreen if the student doesn't follow the school rules. Same information's on there, and just have it in Aspen for the start of the school year, when parents have to go in and do emergency, probably your emergency, contact information and check up on other, policies,
Mhm.
and just reference the policy, and then have a box that they
Yeah.
give
Yep.
permission for the child to apply
Yeah.
sunscreen at school.
Unless there's some reason that the
think it
nurses
should
need
just-
it because they're sending in, it sounds like you're sending in like a thing of non-aerosol sunscreen that my children will ignore and not put on ever at school, get one at home. You know what I mean, like, I feel like, I wonder if it needs to be with that for the nurses. That's something
I mean,
that's
it's not-
procedural though, so you
I'll
all
find
can.
out. I mean, it's not medication, I mean, so it's different than medication where you need to have a
Yep.
specific note with the medication that's
There's
coming in.
definitely something though here,
Right.
because if not, it wouldn't exist.
so it's just saying in the policy, must have written permission, like we don't have to say where you find the permission, where the form is.
Does that need to say parental/guardian, or guardian's allowed to give sunscreen
Yeah.
approval? Under policy right here.
Yep. Parent/guardian.
I just put a note in for you, I can't edit them. Does this not apply to pre-K?
No, they specifically asked that it does, but they specifically asked that pre-K be like its own, live in its own handbook with its own,
Do we have something that covers that?
what did she say? She said, there was some discussion about the PK community, but we'd like to defer that to Jackie for the preschool handbook since this is a unique population.
Well, but does if you go back to the law, what does the law?
Yeah,
Let's see.
the law probably only
The
says
law-
K because, let's see,
That would be my guess. Pull it back
I
up.
don't know, cause I don't have it.
Kindergarten, K through 5.
There you go.
So I would not include preschool in this policy.
Do all sunscreens say that they are approved by the US Food and Drug Administration?
So if we're going to change this to be an Aspen, does number 2 saying must submit the district form, is that still applicable if it's an Aspen form?
My personal recommendation is just leave it as is,
Okay.
and then
I mean,
Ken
now
can
we
talk to the administration, and
Yeah,
then in
I'm saying
September,
that.
yeah, like we could always amend it.
Okay,
And if we get it quickly, we can amend it at school committee.
okay.
I would wanna check, like, cause if the nurses come back and say, no, it needs to be a form because of whatever, I don't wanna,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
I just didn't know, maybe it's the same thing, like if is a form, is Aspen a form, or is that something else?
Can we just say it in a different way?
That's what I was thinking, must
What if you say, what if you
submit
have it as
documentation to
either
the
or,
district?
or- Yeah, or if it's either or for now,
Just
we'll
leave
get a
it.
response, we
Just do
we
it.
can change it
Okay.
before it needs to go.
Yeah, we'll see it
So-
2 more times up there, so.
Okay, so we're gonna remove the form off the bottom, we're gonna insert the regulation, change parent and guardian, add the K, and insert the clause about sunscreen being best applied at home. Any other changes to this one?
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion to move this forward with the modifications discussed.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
So the Suicide Prevention, the Nathan Bruno, Jason Flatt Act, that is another one that has not been reviewed since it was, enacted back in, I think also 2022. And so what I was hoping, Ken, is that you could bring this one back to your team and go through this one, and just see if there's anything that should be updated, changed, incorporated based on things that may have changed or occurred over the past few years.
I mean, the first sentence in the philosophy is like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it references the pandemic. It's not very evergreen, I guess is how I would say it.
Right.
And also, while rates of suicide in Rhode Island have been historically low, like,
Yeah, like all that
Should
needs
we
to
write
change,
this?
but
was I involved in this?
No,
No.
this happened.
I was like, this doesn't feel like me.
No, this was not a policy that this committee had its
Yeah, this
hands
is
on.
June 2022. I
June
was
2022,
not
so
here.
like definitely the purpose and the philosophy needs to change, but before we got into that, I wanted the rest of it to be tightened up and
Mhm.
like looked at, and also, I know this was designed for, you know, students, but I think we need to look with an eye towards, you know, staff support as well, and how we can support students, you know, and staff through
Mhm.
this. So that was my hope, was that you could kind of go through this and, you know, and, is some of this better? Is there too much detail in this, like, in some areas, so just, I'm kind
Do
of.
we know what parts we must have
It just, that, I think that the statute just says that we must have a,
who, I guess I would
We
ask.
have to go back to there was specifics from the law, and I think when this was
Yeah.
first made, there was a model policy from.
That's,
the
I was like,
law
we did
as
not
well.
write this, this definitely
Yeah.
came from.
Yep. I just wrote down, I will go back and
Yeah,
double
can you
check the
check your other
sites.
districts
Yep,
and
see.
stuff?
Yep.
Cause not that it's bad, like model policies are super helpful, but I'm curious, like, which parts are suggestions, which parts are mandatory?
yeah, the policy shall at a minimum address procedures relating to suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. For the purposes of this chapter, postvention means counseling or other social care given to students after another student's suicide or attempted suicide. And there is a develop and maintain a model policy or adopt an existing policy as a model policy to serve as a guide for school districts.
It's possible, and I'm looking at this now, if you look at B, they directed the Department of Ed to develop and maintain a model policy. I'm wondering if that's what this is.
Where do you see B? Oh, way down
1621.73, just the Department of Ed shall develop and maintain a model policy, which doesn't always mean they do, but that
I
may.
can't find
Right,
that.
I
That link isn't linky.
I found it, develop per the requirements from May 2022. It's not really a policy per se, as it is a bunch of resources.
So I went to the one that we did in Jamestown, I'll reference that, because
Okay.
we actually have in there intervention with the
Is it better?
interventions
Cause
with.
we'll just take that one.
You can, I'll email it to you right now.
Use it as a model, if you will.
I'd say some of it we can, just because,
Yeah.
especially under the section for intervention, it says like what will be done by who.
Yeah, so if you can take a look at that
Yeah,
with your staff.
Let me
and-
see, and we can,
Yeah,
I would like though, Jen, that we, try to wrap it up before June. Like, I don't want this one to be one that,
no, that's why I have these on
Yeah.
now.
no, I know, but like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want this to be like 6 months later and we still haven't updated it. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah,
if we can get some feedback from Ken's team, then
Yeah.
we can at least make some updates and then we could
Yes.
always come back to it.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's one we don't wanna
yeah.
have on the table for months
okay,
and months
but,
and months.
safety threat assessment team meeting coming up for the next 2 weeks, so I can put on that agenda too.
Great.
Okay.
Sounds
So we have
good.
some mental health
Yep.
stuff that we can.
Jen, I found
go
the
through.
model policy.
Like a policy
It's
or their
I mean, the
it's
resource
17
list-
pages, so
17-page
it's,
thing, yeah,
it's
yeah.
a bit much.
So I just put the one from Jamestown in the folder,
Okay,
so you can just look at it
Okay.
and see, I think there's a section of it that you can pull out.
I'll drop that.
I bet too, if we,
back in
we Google it, we might be able to do a quick, like, assessment of what some of the other towns have. and
Yeah,
see what
Ken,
we-
I'm happy to
yeah.
start a,
Ideas and suggestions. on-
ideas and suggestions
Okay.
if that's helpful.
Sure.
When is your meeting?
Hold on, I gotta look it up.
Just don't say tomorrow and I can help.
No, I think it's next week.
Okay,
Is-
I mean, ours is already very long too. 7 pages is beefy for a policy. So if we keep it this long, I definitely think we should make the sections like more clear, even though like,
Yeah, it's in 2 weeks actually.
okay, yeah,
So
I
we
can,
have
I
time.
can work on something this weekend and put something together for you to have to review.
What I'll do, I'll share with the principals and our mental health staff as well, and
Okay.
just look at, especially the intervention piece, like, make sure that we have it in there of who responds, what do we do when
Yep.
we get notice of it. I mean, it's similar what we get, like when we get information that comes in through the, see something, say something app, every now and then we get something like that, so, we do internally have a process here of what we do, it's just not identified in the current policy.
well, procedure versus policy is different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't mean like a procedure, but I
Yeah.
think there needs to be something in there that references intervention.
That there's something
That
happening.
we are doing something here in the district.
And actually, Jen, that 17-page document, the last 3 pages are a template policy.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
And never seen so many references and resources at the bottom of a policy. I wonder how any of these links still work. Jen, I'm sure it's real in the online, but like when you copied it over, none of those links work anymore, at least for me. Like all the stuff at the bottom, I like went to check to see if they still vibe and they don't link.
Like the resource links?
Yeah,
I wonder if they do.
I bet they, I'm gonna go look.
I was gonna say, I wonder if it's just when I upload it.
Yeah, it's probably just from
under-
Google, but just,
They do link in, oh, no, that's not a real link.
Yeah, I think the link is, the links might not have transferred over. 'Cause
we're
when you
looking for the
highlight
real
it-
one though. Like we're looking at the one on our website to see if they still work.
Yeah, no, some of them do, so I wonder if just some of them are broken and,
Mm.
and some of them. Looks like the RIGL ones are good.
Some of them are, like the NAMI one is good.
Yeah, some of them are.
Alright, so we'll just double
Yeah,
check them and
okay,
make
yep.
sure we're,
If we keep them.
I think also not only having them here, but having them on the website somewhere.
Mhm.
I don't know if,
Do we have a page?
I am,
on the
I
website?
just went down that rabbit hole in my head, hold on. There is a student support resource page. Okay. There's one, yeah, crisis and intervention, there's 2 links, one goes to suicide prevention, it brings you to the National Institute of Mental Health, and then the other link brings you to Kids Link. So there is something on there.
Where are you?
I'm on the
How did you
North
get there?
Kings, I Googled it. It's under SS resources, how you get there, and go to maybe students.
Yeah, it's not under the main thing, I wonder if it's under.
Yeah, if you click on, it didn't work if you go to more
Oh,
and then
it's,
click on
it's
students.
buried under
Yeah,
the
and
high
you also, if you
school,
go to the
yeah.
middle schools have a page as well
Yeah, so does
with
the high school,
resources.
yeah.
So it's under
This is,
support
this is
services.
on, this
for
is
middle
one
school.
click from the main page though. If you go to more and then click students.
I don't have students for more.
Under your more
Yeah.
bar, it doesn't say students?
No, I have staff, about us, and community.
What? Mine says family, staff, and students.
Mine does not.
Look.
No, see,
What is yours? Let's get. Yeah, students, right there. You don't need more, your
Oh,
thingy's
okay.
bigger than mine.
oh, okay.
Just, no, click on it though. Don't do the drop down, just, and then scroll down.
That's weird.
I see when I go here. If I click on that.
If you just go to the middle schools,
That's weird.
and then go
Yeah.
to support services, it's there. There's,
Okay.
but for middle school and Davis Middle School have the same
Yep.
information.
I
same
would say
page.
whatever resources, so there's 2 links on this page, like whatever if we're linking resources in the policy, we can do it on the web too.
Okay, any other discussion on this policy?
There hasn't been any other laws, since 2022 that would impact this, is there? Like, I know there was the one about, with the, I don't know where the Alicia,
That did not pass.
yep. Okay.
We'll double check, but I don't believe so. I just pulled the statute up and I don't see anything that's changed.
Okay.
Okay. Alright, so the next one that RIDE requires us to review, and our policy as written also requires us to annually review it, and we also need to review it because I'm not sure, well, there's a couple of reasons why this one's on the policy. So RIDE requires an annual review, our policy as written requires us to annually review it. This is the transgender and non-binary student policy. RIL has had some changes that affect our policy as it's written, and we also reference Title IX and, gender discrimination in here, so I don't know if I think we have to change the language around that.
Yeah, when I went through, Jen, what you had already done was going to be my suggestion. I would delete the references to Title IX.
Okay,
I would delete the references to federal guidance.
okay,
I would keep the references to state guidance.
okay,
And I think we added some language that included the recent guidance from RIDE and the Attorney General's office.
okay. So, starting at the top, like
Let's
Andrew
take
just
a-
said, the changes are under these sections. Under policy statement, under legal authority, Title IX is no longer governing this because of the changes that cause us
Correct.
to change our Title IX policy.
Yep.
What page are you on, Jen?
Oh,
Where are you?
I
Hold on,
don't
you
It's
don't
know.
have to
page
Numbers.
I'll add them.
4 of 10, legal authority. It's the one line on page 4.
Alright, so nothing on page 1.
No, first thing is page 4.
Did we check that, where did we get? Oh, we pulled the definitions from different places.
You know what else, Jen? I would add, as I'm looking at this, under legal authority, I'll get it for you, I'd add the state regulation.
Okay,
I'll make a note for you, Jen.
and so we need to remove under FERPA, right? Okay, so we've got a couple references to U.S. Department of Education in here. The FERPA is a federal law that protects the privacy of student
What page
education
are you on now?
records. I'm still on the same page.
Okay.
The law applies to all schools that receive funds under an applicable program of the U.S. Department of Education. Is that still?
That's still fine.
Okay. Pursuant to FERPA, blah, blah, blah. The U.S. Department of Education and the Rhode Island Department of Education have issued guidance stating that school districts shall adhere to both Title IX and FERPA in order to protect transgender. So we need to remove the U.S. Department of Education.
And Title IX.
and
I
Title IX.
highlighted it for you.
So,
Purpose still looks the same.
and I will get you, let me see if I can find that regulation right now, Jen.
It's not 1124-1?
No, there's a separate state regulation.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna take this out. Nothing changes as far as the policy.
Did we make any changes to the bullying, harassment, and discrimination? Like, it references, the superintendent will follow all existing policy procedures regarding bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Should we reference?
You wanna reference our policy ACB?
Probably,
Okay.
right?
I'm sorry, let me pull it back up. Where are you?
I'm on page 6 on the top.
Well, but there's a couple, so there.
Yeah, policies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just feel like whenever we're saying that
ACB,
existing policy, like, we should be referencing what policy?
Okay.
Just do a control all for federal.
Okay, and then the next change is, so,
And you can leave some federal, it's really the Title IX is the only thing that's been legally exempted out of transgender right now. The other federal law protections haven't been successfully removed at this point. They'd still be protected.
For what though? What federal law is
Yeah,
protecting?
like anti-harassment, like Title VI, I mean,
Mhm. I mean.
yeah, no, I
maybe.
did, Title IX was the big one.
I mean, if there's other things that are protecting students, I definitely would wanna know,
Yep.
but I'm not overly.
You're certainly safer with the state law right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
we can look though.
Yep, we'll look.
So then, the big change here is physical education and intramural and interscholastic athletics because of the change that RIL made in their policies. Because we reverted back to their policy in our policy, and because they've changed ours, we need to change ours. So this is the language being proposed in here, which is that all students shall be permitted to participate in physical education classes and intramural sports, not intramural, interscholastic, intramural sports in a manner consistent with their gender identity. Regarding interscholastic sports teams, the district will follow the RIL rules pertaining to participation consistent with gender identity. Regulations, determination of gender, basically it's saying that, we will follow, they're saying that it's up to the individual schools to determine eligibility based on the current law, and we're saying that we are in compliance with the current law, based on the law as it stands, today, correct, Andrew?
Correct, and we
Yeah.
also referenced the February 28th guidance from the Attorney General
Yeah.
at RIDE, which say to stay with the current state.
And what I would like to add is that RIL basically puts it on the individual principal. My request is to add something saying that it's the district policy, that it's a district decision, so that it's not up to the individual principals to be making that determination, that it's our district practice that students be allowed to participate based on their gender identity, because the RIL puts it at the principal level.
I mean, you can do that, you can the policy dictates, it says right, all students shall be permitted to participate, so either we would have to instruct all the principals that that's the district's policy, or you could make it more specific in here and just say, any principals, prior to making a decision in this regard should consult this policy and
The superintendent.
administration,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rather just be where it's falling with the policy, not something we're putting on individual principals to make decisions on.
Yep.
I don't
Well, then
think
if you wanna do it that way, can I?
It should
Yeah,
refer back to the
Jen's
policy.
only saying that because of the RIL.
Not
Right.
that it's on
They said
individual
principals.
Yeah, the RIL says
That's right from their
principal, they
reg,
don't say
yeah, right.
district,
I don't think it
they
should
say
be on
principal.
individual principals.
Yeah, so we're gonna, that's the floor, we can go above the
Right,
floor.
yeah.
Exactly right.
I wanna make it the district, so that in
Yeah.
our district,
Alright.
it's at the district level.
Yeah, we're all in agreement on that.
Okay, so what's the best way to say that?
You could probably add, so up where it says all students shall be permitted, so let me just try this, in North Kingston. Thank you, okay.
Mhm.
Interscholastic sports, not intramural in that last one, right?
Well, we had intramural up top too.
Well, that's
RIL.
cause we can make the decision
Right.
for, right?
Yep, And RIIL will take care of the interscholastic.
Okay. Okay, and then I think those were the only changes that needed to be made. My only question was part of this policy, Ken, related to training and professional development. And I just wanted to check in to see if that is happening. Because it's been a year since we put this in place.
What page you on?
The last page.
Goes down to page, it's the bottom of page 9.
Is there a time frame on it, Jen?
Now, so it says, what it does say,
Ongoing?
No, it says incorporated into training for new school
for new school,
employees.
and then it says ongoing professional development. Hold on, I just had it, I just refreshed it.
Past me would have written, or future me would have written that's different than past me.
Well, future you is here now.
I know,
By
I
the
know.
policy, so I just feel like.
You know, I don't like ones that are amorphous,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you know that.
I mean,
like-
I felt this piece was important when we drafted this policy, and I feel like where we're at now, it's, you know, even more important, knowing the student population.
Knowing that we just deleted a bunch of stuff from this policy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says information regarding the policy shall be included in training for new school employees, and then district shall implement ongoing professional development to build the skills of all staff members. So, we go over the policy, but.
That's not
That's not what
we
this
did- I
says,
know,
yeah.
can't say
Yeah,
it's
so
a
I think-
specific training, so we'll need to do that. For
Which
new-
is great.
right,
No, for everybody.
new employees, and then something for ongoing professional
Yeah.
development for everyone, so.
okay.
Yeah, what were we gonna say?
I just, and it's not about the current administration, but I prefer like more quantitative metrics for trainings, like if we're, like ongoing is, like what's ongoing, right? Is it every year? Is it every 5 years? Is it every week? Is it like what, like that word to me?
I would take something, if something says ongoing, then we should be doing at least annually, something has to
Yeah.
be happening each year
Yeah.
to provide some type of professional.
I would prefer the word annually then
So-
versus ongoing, I just think, and it could be like at minimum annually, but like, you know, there's nothing that says that they can't do it more than that, but I do feel like you could make an argument against if a school committee said like, hey, administration, you're not doing this, like, what are we fighting about for ongoing?
Mhm.
Like, that to me would be,
So are we
Hard
gonna-
for understanding on
I
both
would say
sides.
annually, 'cause I mean, to me, if it's something's ongoing, then it's something we're offering
Okay.
once a year.
yeah,
I'm
so
gonna
let's
change this to
change that,
annually.
yeah. New employees and annually. Do we still agree with what? The 5 bullets? Do you think?
I'm just.
I know
if
what
don't
you're
do this
doing.
now, it's not.
No, I appreciate it very much. I just see you're typing really, it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, no, I think those are all,
Yeah, I think they're
Yeah.
legit. I left federal because
Yeah.
lack of
yeah,
is
is just
lack
as
of a
much
federal
of
law,
a training
yeah,
point,
yeah, I went to
Mhm.
delete it and then I said, yeah, I think you should just leave it, cause then you could just reference, it's not this, but it is this and this,
I
so.
think that's true.
I deleted everywhere else except for there, maybe.
Okay. Okay. So, and I think evaluation and review, this policy shall be reviewed at least annually and updated as needed to conform to amendments and changes in applicable state and federal law, rules and regulations, as well as best practices, and that's what we just did.
It's actually in there twice. There's a part at the top that says that the superintendent will notify the school committee as soon as possible if anything in this policy becomes unlawful. Google the word unlawful, it caught my eye, and that's why.
Where did you see that in?
I don't know. It was before, and I knew it. Like,
Yeah, under the, policy statement, legal authority.
in the event of, yeah, it's on page 5 on the bottom. In the event of any part of this policy is unlawful, the superintendent will report such event to the school committee as soon as practical and request of the school committee a modification of this policy.
Yep.
But then it's twice, like it says it again at the bottom.
Oh,
It kind of expands it down below
Yeah.
because it's best practices as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fine, that just caught my eye last time,
Yeah.
so. One thing that I was curious about at the very end, Jen, on publication and communication, it says that transgender and non-binary student policy shall be distributed annually and shall be posted on the district's website. And then, so it says that sentence, right? And then it says the district and individual schools shall make constant efforts to ensure the visibility and accessibility of this policy for students, parents, we need to add
Yeah.
guardian and staff. But the first sentence, distribute annually to whom? Like, is that just the staff? Is that just the students? Is that the entire district? Like, the second sentence makes it seem like it's everybody, but it doesn't explicitly say this policy needs to be sent to everybody, like all of those constituents. Are you following what I'm saying?
I am. So, like, in my mind, when I hear distributed annually, it's one of those policies that's in the Aspen sign-off, right? And then it goes to all the, staff as part of the annual training. That's in my mind, but I don't know if that's what's real.
I don't read it like that.
How do you read it?
That if the superintendent or someone distributed it to anyone annually, they would be in compliance.
Like, if he just sent it right to me, tag, you're in,
Well,
it's
like-
annually distributed.
Kinda. It's like,
Yeah.
according to the
No,
sentence.
you're right, technically, that's what it says.
Technically,
Yeah.
if you sent it to somebody, you could make an argument that you distributed it annually.
Ken, is there a list of policies that get distributed annually to a group of people?
So, yes, we do have that.
So like, for example, like
So at the beginning of the year, we have a list that we send out and ask everyone, once you're done reading them, please
That's
send
just
them on the
staff,
Google
though.
form. We do that for all of our staff.
yeah,
And then in the student, there's a list in this, from, between the student handbook and what they sent off on announcement.
Yeah, that's in my mind what I see when I read that, but I see what you're saying, Erin, cause that's not what that says. But
No.
that's what I.
yeah, but you know,
I know, yep, no, that's not what that says, so.
so I would
Yeah,
change, I
Shall
would make
be
it more
included
specific.
in the list of annual policies for staff and students/families to sign off on an annual basis.
Where is that? 'Cause
It's
I
on
just don't see
page,
it.
10. Cause I was just thinking about, like, I know with one of the other policies we'd written in, like, that it needs to be, like, sent to this specific population twice a year. You know, like, things
Yeah.
like that, and so I think just what Andrew just added is better.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to address with this policy while it is in front of us?
Have any of your clients, like, changed or updated any of theirs for things maybe they've forgotten in policies? Like, I know obviously there's like the Title IX, like updating that sort of stuff, but have you noticed anyone adding things to policies like this?
I know the interscholastic league piece has
Yeah.
been something that a lot are
Yeah.
trying to address one
But
way or the
other
other.
than that,
No.
nothing, okay.
No. I think once that guidance came out, I think everyone just kind of sat where they are and waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how we were talking about, like staff in the other one, and
I mean, I think the Title IX piece is clear, right? That was even from before, through the
Yeah.
injunction. The Title IX piece has been about as clearly answered as you're going to find. But the other stuff is all completely
policy.
Does this policy as written does not address staff?
No.
Can we modify it so that it is not just a student policy and also protects our staff?
I don't know why not. Yeah.
What would
So
need
they're
to
afforded the same protections.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what would need to change for it to protect our staff?
Let me just take a look.
Like, I'm just thinking, like, and this is like a worst case, but like, if a certain employee said, hey, I would like to be called by these pronouns,
Mhm.
and then like the principal wasn't
Mhm.
complying to
No,
that,
it's
or
a-
the, you know, like, it's the same thing, and
Yeah,
it's
no,
possible.
And that was actually raised at one point, at some point after we implemented this policy. Like, that's great, but what about staff?
No.
I mean, it does say that the policy applies to the entire school committee, but that's more kind of like in the lines of beliefs.
You must comply.
Yeah, beliefs all.
Yeah, and some of the, it's a little awkward because some of the guidance, I believe Ryan's guidance is, I have to double check, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
believe that
think
is
you could
specific
just
to
switch,
students.
I don't think you could just switch
Yeah, you'd
the
almost
word
have to have a
student,
separate,
like,
right.
you could include, I don't think you need a separate policy, but you would probably wanna include a separate a different section.
Oh, you know what though?
Look, I'm just going through the whole thing and see if.
Yeah,
there's
actually, I
anything
take that back, the ride,
specifically
the ride
changed.
one, all school, child, yeah, I mean, I think the ride one is broader than I thought.
I just did a quick Google and it says that, employees are protected under
Title
Title Seven.
Yep,
Yeah.
it came to me, my titles are a little slow, I wrote it right there, Title VII.
So would we be okay with approving this with the changes, and then if Andrew and I work on incorporating employee protections in here?
Yeah, I mean, you're fine to do that,
Jen's saying, can we push it to the school committee?
Yeah,
And is,
and we
are
can
Ken
add, we
and
can
I
add the
okay
employee
with
piece afterwards.
the amended
Sure.
piece?
I just think some of it you gotta put like for like, there's one line here about ensuring that a school is a safe and supportive learning environment for all students. I think you gotta have.
I don't think,
Something
we're not
in
saying
regarding-
amending each sentence, we're saying like adding a paragraph. Like, I don't wanna try to.
Might even just be a paragraph at the
Yeah,
end that says, you know,
yeah.
the school consistent with Title VII and the Rhode
Yeah,
Island,
yeah.
blah,
Yeah,
blah,
I
blah.
think I don't think you go through line by line
Yeah.
and try to fix it. I
Let me
think
see
you
if I
just
can,
put it
let me see if I can
Yeah.
find
in.
something that captures that.
Yeah, like the intent of this policy is also to protect, you
Yeah.
know, our staff, blah, 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 you know, and they're covered under X, Y, Z.
Yeah, just noting that those protections
Yeah.
and whatnot. So yes, Jen, to answer your question, I'm comfortable moving it forward, knowing that we'll see it up there.
Yeah, and any changes can be made there.
Yep.
Ken, what about you?
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay, so I'll make that motion. Can you want
Do
a
I
second?
second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. And Andrew, you and I can work on that together? Yes, okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
So going back to tobacco on school property. So this one is kind of convoluted. So
This one?
we had seen this one in 2023 and we had gone through it.
Wait, hold on. I'm trying to.
Drug, alcohol, and tobacco.
There we go. I was like looking under T and I
So
was
was I.
not seeing it.
No, just tobacco product use on school property, GBED. Yeah, it's in under drug and alcohol use, but.
Yeah,
just-
I was looking
yeah.
in the folders and I couldn't find it.
Okay.
And then you're on the one that the April 26th one.
Yes, that's
The,
okay.
the word one, Jen?
It is the,
Yeah, 9/5/23.
Got it.
Is that one?
is it? Yes, so that's the original policy, right? And then Department of Health came out with a tobacco-free model schools policy. And we asked not like officially, but we asked the Health and Wellness Committee to take a look at our policy and the model schools policy and make any recommendations that they thought we should do to our policy in line with the model policy. And so that was back before the election, right? And so they didn't look at it and then they finally did. So the Health and Wellness has made a bunch of recommendations that is in the from H&W file. This is what they have sent to us.
So these are the Health and Wellness Committee's recommendations.
Correct. And they
Based on their
also,
conversations,
on
but-
their own, decided to look at the chemical health policy. And they reference that in here. That one is coming to us. So I looked at the model policy, and they didn't choose to use the model policy. They just made some changes. So I feel like this one needs some review, because
So they put out a model policy that was revised in August of 2024.
yes. And so the Health and Wellness Policy Advisory Committee made some changes to our existing policy.
But they didn't touch the model policy. Is
They
that-
didn't really use the model policy. They used like a
Do we
few
know
little
why
things.
they didn't use the, do we know, like, because if we, so they reviewed the policy, were they asked to review the policy, or they did that and then,
They were asked to review, they were asked to review the model policy and
Okay.
let us know if there was anything they wanted to incorporate from the
Not
model policy.
officially.
Not
Not like the
officially.
school committee didn't
Yes,
ask them
it,
to.
it was just a, hey, will you take a look at this?
Yep.
And so,
I mean, they didn't change much.
they did not change much.
and did they reference the, I mean,
They took a few things, they took a couple definitions.
They're not all the same though.
No, I'm a little confused.
Alright, doesn't matter though. Okay, we have received their feedback. Now what do we wanna do?
I would like us to review the model policy.
Yeah.
And decide which of their recommendations we wanna incorporate and which of the model policy recommendations we'd like to incorporate. But I'd like to wait until we get the chemical health and wellness policy so that we can look at them all together. Why? Because they reference the chemical health and student safety policy in here, and I think it makes sense to look at that in conjunction with this.
So when was the last time we looked at this one?
2023.
And their model one was from
2024.
No, but they launched it in 2019 and they
And-
revised it in 2022. So in theory,
No, they updated it again in 2024.
no, I know.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're not at zero. We're at like just the last revisions.
Correct.
Do we know what they changed in the last revisions?
The model policy,
Yeah,
I do not know.
that would have been helpful. You know what I mean? Like if I would have been like, these are the things we changed in 2024.
Yeah.
But I do not think that we changed our policy reflective of the model tobacco policy.
And
In
actually,
23?
it says it was reviewed in 24. Doesn't indicate that it was amended.
Because if you look at the model policy.
No, it says revised August 22 and August 24. The model or ours?
Ours. I'm
Oh.
sorry. Yeah, I was looking at ours. Ours was reviewed in July of 23.
Oh yeah, it
and
might
then
not
again
have been
September
amended
of 23,
until
but it doesn't think it was touched.
2018.
Right. That's exactly right. The last amendment was
Got it.
4/24/18.
There is a lot of education in the model policy that is not in our policy.
does it need to be in there? I'm just asking, how long do we want this policy to be? Because that was the one thing that popped out at me when I'm looking at the model policy, is that the whole, like the rationale is quite long.
Right.
And do we need all of that in the policy? Because what happens if, once our policies get to
No.
be over 3 or 4 pages,
Yeah.
people aren't really gonna read them and take it in, so I think we gotta be
That's
careful.
kind of why, like, really, like, tobacco free is you can't smoke here, period, right? But like the rest of the stuff, I'm wondering, does that belong in the other?
No, but there's stuff like in here though, like tobacco industry promotions prohibited, right? So we can't get gifts, money of anything connected to tobacco industry. They cannot promote, so like we couldn't ever have like a promotion for vaping or something. You know, like that sort of stuff should be in this one.
Yeah,
You
and
could
it's
probably
not.
delete
Yeah, no,
that
I
whole
know.
first paragraph. That just kind of gives the
Yeah,
statistical
that's
background.
yeah. I don't love that. We don't need all of that.
And
in
it
my
also,
opinion.
like, I don't think our policy, we tried to kind of, we did update it when we updated it to include like e-cigarettes and things like that. So, I mean, we can,
would say, Jen, just go through and redline it.
Okay.
Like put, like,
Okay,
what they have in here isn't wacky. Like the model policy is actually fairly straightforward in at least I think it's fairly straightforward. The only thing that would be important is about the violations. Like there's some conduct stuff in here
yeah,
that I would want, like, that would be,
I was gonna say
Not
that,
us.
I wouldn't just put that in the,
no, I would want you all to look at that part of it, cause that's not, like, that's not cut and paste by any means. And also about the educational program part.
yeah, so section 4, we can't just place that in there.
No. It's that, and, well, yeah, because it's talking about implementing education as part of the sanctions, right? Your first violation, you get in trouble, you need to complete in-depth, like, whatever it is.
Writing a 2-page essay.
Yeah, and I don't know what they are currently doing.
okay, so health and wellness meets this week.
It doesn't need to go back to them.
No, I'm not suggesting it goes
Alright.
back to them, but I would like to see what they're doing with the other policy and look at them both together, cause I don't wanna go through this.
Did we get feedback from as to why they didn't include more of the model policy in the policy?
My sense, and this is just my sense from watching the meetings, is that they did not like some of the recommendations around education and enforcement. That is just my sense.
And I think this needs to be shared with the building principals too, as far
This isn't
as
even in the
what-
health and wellness scope of their
Right,
charge. Like that committee by statute really focuses on,
the health and wellness policy.
well, the health and wellness policy is the only policy that is referenced, but also on, like obesity. Like that's really why those state mandated, that's why it exists. And although I always appreciate feedback, like it's not by statute that we need to have them looking at it, although we could always get more information from them.
No, so now that we have the model policy, I would like to see their feedback on the other one and look at the two in conjunction and then go from there. Because they're referencing the chemical health policy, which I am assuming that they have redlined as well, and I'd like to see their input on that, and then we can go through here as well.
What I think would be helpful too is instead of just getting like a red line policy, like getting a synopsis of like discussion, to kind of Ken's point, like why didn't they
Can we,
put something in or why didn't they like something?
can we invite Sherry to the next policy meeting?
No,
Or they're just minutes?
you can't, there's three,
Oh,
there'd be
yeah,
three of
there's
us.
three of us.
Oh.
I was like, not that I don't want her here, but like legally, no, you cannot invite her.
Are there minutes from the meeting, just to kind of look at the minutes?
Oh,
of-
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think regardless, I think I particularly would care, I would like to hear from the building principals and the administration though. Like on some of these ones, like, but also I think it's honestly, for the amount of things I've seen come from other entities, like I actually think this is a pretty legitimate resource, like model policy, like
Mhm.
it's one of the more comprehensive ones that I've seen
Yeah.
roll down. I think you just have to kind of take what you would like from it.
Okay,
Cause it's long, but a lot of the longness, Ken, is additional resources. Like it's not, the policy itself
Yeah.
isn't wildly long. And it also gives you like options, so like, you know, under educational programming, it gives you option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, and then it like outlines exactly what that option is
Yeah.
and what that curriculum is.
yeah.
That doesn't necessarily have to be in the policy.
Actually, Rob was at some of those meetings, so Rob should be able to provide feedback on some of that.
Mezzanotte.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean though, like if you were going to copy and paste this, you might just say, you know, the administration will select an option, you know, provided by, you know, one of the educational program options.
Yep.
I don't think you need all of them stacked in a policy like that.
Okay. I'll take a
60
look at it.
minutes of My Healthy Futures, a self-paced interactive course for students to complete on their own. But I do like the educational component of the,
I believe right now the students are given a choice too, is that in our current policy? So if they do get caught with any of these products on school grounds,
I think that's in the other policy, that's not in
they're
this one.
given,
That's why when I look at them both.
Yeah, okay.
Because there is an educational piece, but I think there, if you want a choice, do you wanna do A or B, and then sometimes they choose the piece that requires less.
Okay, and then the last one is a new policy on student surveys, because we do not have a policy on student surveys. And,
Wait, Jen, sorry, what was the next step on tobacco free? I know you wanna wait for the other one, but also at the same
I'm
time.
gonna put together a draft based on the model policy or
Yep.
existing policy
And
and
then
feedback from them and give it to Ken
give it to
for him
Ken.
to review with his
Alright.
administration.
Do you have, what do you call it? The meeting when the people come.
The admin council?
Yes, thank you. When
Our
is
next-
that?
Our next admin council is already full, so we're meeting Monday, so I would push off for 2 more, it's every other Monday, so.
So what's that date?
Like 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Because the
I'm just
one-
thinking like if you get, like trying to think about the timing so that if that could get on the agenda.
Yep. The next one is a draft of a student survey policy, because we do not have a policy on student survey. And, the question came up when we were working on the
On the
survey
student survey?
for the,
Which doc, Jen?
well, that's weird. I did one, where is it? Hold on.
Warwick has one. Wild.
Yep. Not a bad one either.
No, they revised it in last year.
Yep.
Good.
Here it is, hold on. It would help if I put it in the drive. The question came up when we were working on the survey in the DEI advisory committee. So, because we need permission,
Wait, hold on, what did you?
that's in your draft student surveys.
Ah,
So we need permission for surveys from outside agencies. But we don't need permission for internal surveys, but we don't have that written down anymore. So it's always a question when we wanna do a survey, what do we need? And what's the process for notifying, parents of their ability to opt out?
Right, either passive or
Um,
active consent.
Right, active consent versus this and the other thing. So Andrew had given me one from Warwick that I put in the drive, but I found one from Minnesota that I actually like better. So I put that in here, under the draft student survey, which basically says, cause it goes into more like the surveys will be anonymous, and, students can choose whether or not to, participate, but it also covers the same information about, we have to provide notice, for US Department of Education conducted surveys and surveys that cover the 8, required subjects. So this is just a draft to look at. The Warwick one is in here also in the folder. It has the same language as the Warwick one in the second part of the policy draft, but it has a little bit more like kind of user-friendly information in the first part of the policy.
alright.
Yeah, those bulleted, or the letters A through H, and those come right from,
Yeah.
the statute, so.
So I think the purpose, the first line just sticks out to me.
Occasionally.
Not that.
Okay, I don't like that part.
Yeah, utilize surveys to obtain student opinions and information about students.
Oh yeah, that doesn't sound too good when you read it out loud, but yeah.
So like,
I copied it right from the other one.
it's okay.
Yeah.
I just think we should, like, the purpose of the surveys is to gather their opinions and feedback on
Okay.
Mhm.
certain topics, right, that we might be looking for information on. I don't think, I wouldn't put in there information about students, because then it looks like we're collecting
It sounds a
data
little
on
bit
Yeah, it's just a bad
yes,
sentence.
And that's
yeah,
just
yeah,
gonna
gathering.
not go well.
Yeah, the goal is to get student voice, period.
Yeah.
Or like
And I
you
would
said.
even use the word student voice.
Yeah, I
right, to
added
be
it under
able
the
to-
philosophy, cause like the purpose is to have a policy to guide getting, how to appropriately
Mhm.
get information from students. the philosophy is, like, to me, like, we appreciate and know that, like, we're here for students and we want their voice in their, in things, decision making, basically. I put a little note for you, Jen, so you don't forget, but. Did you ever take a class with Felice?
The Cold Spring, Minnesota, Jen, that's the one that you like?
She was,
Yes, maybe.
All I can think, I've heard thinking about this. Student.
Yeah, I
Did
put
elementary,
there were a
secondary
couple of, must be,
program.
yeah, Cold Spring, Minnesota, and then there was another one from, someplace else in Minnesota.
Is it undiscernible or indiscernible? I can't decide now.
Yes, Cold Spring, Minnesota. So it kind of has two parts, like surveys in general, and then surveys conducted as part of the U.S. Department of Education, and then notice that's required.
What about, RIDE? Like survey works.
Yep, we could add that as part of it.
Yeah.
That actually wasn't in the Warwick policy, RIDE surveys. Was it?
You know what I mean? Like, cause that's a different subcategory of
Yeah.
that, like, it's not federal and it's not us.
Oh, yeah, that is in here, so I'll add that to, so U.S. Department of Education and RIDE or a third-party vendor. U.S.
So,
Yeah, the Warwick one doesn't really differentiate.
Yep.
so is this only for like Google form surveys? Like, we're not, this doesn't cover surveying in another way, like focus groups or anything like that?
Good question.
What would you mean by focus groups?
Like when you get like a focus group, like you get like
I mean, I read this to.
like hardcore like paper survey, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this would, my reaction is that this would apply if it was just, let's say you wanted to send out a survey on school buildings,
Mhm.
something like that. Now you'd have to see what applies in here, that would obviously be passive consent, if at all, because it wouldn't be mandatory, you'd be searching, you know what I mean, looking for something. But would you have to give parents the notice that that's going out? I would think so.
I feel like you didn't understand my question.
No, like, but is it like a written survey, or if we wanna gather a group of
I see,
students
I
in
see-
a
oh, I
room
think-
and
I
ask
see a
them
focus group
questions?
as being very different than the survey.
Yeah, but you're
Right,
still
focus
survey,
groups
you're
more-
surveying students.
I think
I just
to
wanna
me,
make
the
sure we're all on
survey
the
is the
same
gathering
page.
of the
I mean,
information, whether it's a
you're
form, whether
getting-
it's a Google form, regardless, if you're asking a set of questions, regardless of how they're asked.
Yep.
And eliciting answers from a select group of people, to me, that's a survey.
Okay, so in your brains, paper. Not paper, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just curious, like, say an administrator wanted to get 10 students in a room
Vision of a graduate.
and
Yeah.
survey them qualitatively on something. Or
I
do
would-
student interviews. No, I wanna protect students, so like
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I gotcha.
wanna, like when
would
I think survey,
include
it's
this.
not just form
I would
survey.
include this in here, because
Yeah.
if we're doing focus groups, we're still getting students to provide us
Yeah,
information.
it should be
We're gathering
written
their
into
opinion
this.
and their
Yeah.
feedback, I would definitely put that in here.
Yeah, so I feel
as
like that we should, I wanna make sure
more
students are
of like,
protected,
this
so
is
we
more of a
won't.
policy about student voice and how their voice is
Yeah.
included in decisions
If
we're
you
making, and how
Google-
we gather that information.
Yeah, cause like, not just focus group, is vision of the graduate, right? Does it cover school improvement teams, right? Like, what does it
So
cover?
Students are providing
if
input.
you Google like, what are ways to effectively survey students? Like it will come back saying online surveys, paper surveys, in-person interviews, focus groups. You know, so I just think we should broaden the scope a little bit to make sure that we're clear on all of those things, 'cause I don't want somebody to read this policy and be like, oh, it's a pain in the butt to send out a survey, so we'll just ask the students instead. Cause then I was thinking about the anonymous part of that, cause that isn't fully anonymous.
Maybe.
Well, no, they should be anonymous, it should be something about like the report out should not have any identifiable facts. or any info, like when you write up a report and say like, oh, Susie and Bobby met with us, no, student A, student B. You can leave it there, but that's what made me think of it.
Okay. But that doesn't work for a focus group because you can't conduct a focus group anonymously.
No.
No, but you can report out on the findings of that anonymously.
So how do we differentiate?
I don't know. I know I'm making it more complicated, but
No,
And
no,
I'm
no.
reading through right now to see if I can get some kind of,
I'm trying to think of like what was in my, like the IRB stuff, like the, like. Legally, what does family life constitute? If a survey contains questions pertaining to the students or students' personal beliefs or practices in sex, family life, morality, and religion. What is family life?
see, honestly, I'd say that anything that relates to outside of specifically of school.
Okay.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah.
I just added something, comments about like how the surveys can be used in like focus groups.
Hmm?
I added in the comments just how
Okay.
student voice can be used regarding the surveys, like what might be some of those topics, how student focus groups can
Okay.
be used.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would also put down something about how long records need to be maintained.
Records of permission?
That, or like it goes on to talking about videos and stuff later in this document somewhere. Films, tapes, like things like that that are connected with stuff.
That's saying like they
Yeah,
have to
I
be
know.
made available if a parent or guardian wants to see them.
Forever.
They definitely have to be made available in
Yeah.
advance. I think that would
Yeah.
probably fall under, the Rhode Island Secretary of State has a records retention schedule.
Yeah, just, and then, I know we're
Yeah.
working it, but that's something I would think about, is like, I remember when I did my dissertation, like having to maintain the raw data of my survey for 7 years, and I had to maintain the interview tapes for a certain amount of time, like there's some thing, and I know that's not exactly what this is referencing to, this is referencing, like if you're asking them about curriculum or whatever, but like there's some, I feel like that should be a little
Okay.
tighter. Does that work? I just had to Google
That's all right from some statute.
analogous.
The,
Is that a word that people
I
know?
think it's like one-to-one relationships.
the language in A, if we're under, still under section 4, just seems outdated when you think of like education, teachers' manuals, films, tapes. Like, I think the point of what this section is that if there are any types of materials being presented to the students as part of the survey, as part of a focus group, right? Those would be made available for parent or guardian to view. It comes across as being outdated, like the manuals from, like so much that we do now is like online. We do have books, we do use books, but
Are you picturing somebody wheeling out the old film
I
machine?
kinda do, you're not giving like something old
I
school.
know you've got it
so-
somewhere. I know
so
there's a
I
tape
just-
of
I
an
just think
VHS
that,
floating
like,
around somewhere in this district.
Yeah, probably.
So
But
how-
I just think it would, it just, maybe just reference it as, instructional materials in the forms of, books, videos, online materials.
In these, because I didn't get to look at this one in advance, does it have anything about like scope of like how many students? Like, like if a teacher's doing it in a class versus
No.
the whole 8th grade versus the whole district, like does it matter?
I
Like
don't-
that's something that I think we should think about, of like what level does it need to get approved by the superintendent? Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, because I'm thinking, like, play this out with me.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a teacher who has 8 students in their class, I think it matters if they're going to be asking questions that are in 1 through 8, right? Even if there's only 4 students in the classroom.
No, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just saying though, because I'm just saying, I think we need to clearly, well, that says you cannot, right?
Right.
But like, who determines that, I guess, is, cause like to my question, like what is, some of those things are not clear to like what is family life, what is, whatever. Just something that we can
Well,
think
how
about.
does it work now, right? Ken, like, so when they, let's just, so like the students who send out the surveys for their senior projects, right? Like those get sent out, right?
So
How does that
they,
work?
they have to do it themselves. Most of the time they have Google Forms, and they just send it out to a group of kids they know. I don't believe those
Google
are sent
Forms
out
that are
by,
ours.
well, yeah, 'cause it's their project, right?
Yeah, but our Google.
So they're using, when they do
Yeah.
their senior project, they're using our Google site, right? So they're using,
So they don't
create a
have to get
Google form.
permission?
Will they be getting permission right at this level through like their advisor, like through the high school of sending something to get that information?
Okay, so that's, so
Yeah,
they.
so they're getting permission, but it's not like it's not like a teacher sends it out to the entire building. They're just
Yeah, they're
sometimes
individually-
they're putting QR codes, they'll use a QR code for someone to access.
That's why their
survey.
N is like 12, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you only had 12 people fill this out.
'Cause then they.
They're like,
that-
but they
that's
hate the
who gets it,
bathrooms.
Right, and they get it
Okay.
to a group of kids, it's not something that the school is sending out.
So let's go up one more. Junior
So-
class, where do you wanna go for your class trip, right? That goes out to the junior class, that survey, or something like that, right? Like, where do you wanna go?
If they
for that?
have some, I would have to
Okay.
if they do something, but if they do something like that, I mean, is that really a survey? I mean, I think we're
That-
talking more about surveys that, I mean.
But is it? Like, I'm
Well,
like.
it's not gonna that particular one shouldn't implement anyone or implicate any one of the 8 categories, right?
But are we saying you only need to get permission if it's one of these 8 categories?
I think that's what we're trying to figure
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
We have
asking.
0 right now, so we're trying to put some
Right.
parameters on it, and so I think we just have to think about things like that. And I also think, we don't wanna be a burden, right? You don't want a policy to be causing like undue annoyance, but also making
where's
sure that
the
you're
threshold,
protecting, yeah,
right.
what's the threshold of protecting the district, protecting students, making sure that parents and guardians aren't freaking out because, little Johnny came home and took a survey about X today, like.
Right.
And that's what you need to be
That's-
cautious of, because
I know.
as quickly as, or as easily as you could do, where do you wanna go in your junior prom, a couple of follow-up questions to that could really implicate, I mean, the statute's clear, even if the answer could be implicated, it could implicate one of these 8 categories, then
But we
you
don't
need to follow.
have, I mean, is it, on a regular basis, we don't have teachers sending out surveys or advisors to a group of students asking any of these questions, right? I mean, if they're sending out a survey, it might be, okay, well, where we might we be going for, you're planning a class trip, or, you know, I'm trying to think what they don't send anything about prom asking, you know, questions about that, but it could be something regarding a spirit week. We wanna do A or B as a theme for our spirit week. Our teachers aren't and shouldn't be sending out surveys that are specific to any of these 8 categories that are on there.
So is the answer, and again, like,
I
I'm
mean,
just
to
trying
me,
to get to
something
the
like this is
answer.
that's coming out from like a state level or a federal level.
Yeah, is
I
that
mean,
the answer? They need to get permission from you and the school committee if it is a US Department of Education, a RIDE, or a.
I think if we're sending something out, it's just based if it's coming from, US Department of Education, coming from RIDE, coming, I mean, what
From a
about like
third-party vendor.
the RISA
The
surveys
risk,
come
right, cause
here?
those have to come
Third
before,
party,
right,
I mean,
third-party
that's what it
vendors,
should
yeah.
be, I mean, I think this, I think we need to keep it a little more.
Maybe
I
third-party,
think we need to be more specific of
Yeah.
what type of surveys are coming to us for.
That's what I was saying.
third-party
and not
vendor,
so
school
much
committee,
these are
RIDE, and US
categories.
Department of Education
Right. And if
superintendent,
there's a third
everything
party.
else
I
at the
think that would
building
cover it,
level.
right? So if you have
What?
federal, state,
Hold on,
and any
stop,
third party.
stop. My brain, you two are,
Okay.
okay. Let's pause for a second. Yes, Andrew?
No, I think you're both correct. However, I do want to point out that you will be implicated if a teacher who maybe shouldn't, but if a teacher sends something out to their class and implicates any of these categories in any way, shape, or form. And so if a parent gets that, it only went to the social studies. I'm dating myself here, but it only went to class A. Well, if any of the answers implicate anything in here, then you're going to be covered. The fact that it just went out to a class is not going to make a difference.
Yep.
So I don't know exactly how to legislate that, because I think Dr. Dube is right. You don't necessarily want, a 15-person ordeal to just, when a teacher wants to know where the kids want to go
Right.
on a field trip. But I think you do have to be cautious with these.
And the
I've
answer
seen
to that-
surveys go out that will implicate things like this, and it becomes a problem.
And the
quickly.
answer to that isn't that you can't send it, you just have to provide the opt-out in advance.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
first of all, your first level of defense is always as long as it's not mandatory.
Mhm.
If it's mandatory, then you're gonna trigger all kinds of other things. That's where you get into the active consent. But if it's not mandatory, you don't have to participate. The way the Warwick one's written, as well as the Minnesota one that I was reading, you have to notify at the beginning of the year of everyone you know that you're going to send out. And then if something pops up mid-year, you've got, I think Warwick says at least 2 weeks in advance. And again, during that advance period, if Dr. Earl says, I wanna see exactly what that field trip, survey is, let
survey
me
is
take a
gonna
look
be.
at it, she's entitled to see
Yeah.
it.
We're all assuming Dr. Earl read the email about the survey within 2 weeks, let's be real.
I'd like to see that survey that went out a month ago.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the questions that the students wanted to ask on the survey. And where that, if that would land here.
So that again?
I do not,
For the one that started this
only
conversation.
well, we were gonna we were gonna send out the notification anyways, the only one I can think of is number 2.
Oh, just number 2.
But that's why but that survey is anonymous, it is
Cor-
not mandatory,
correct.
and you can skip any question.
And when Rob had answered the questions that were relevant to that, they were all, quite frankly, all the answers were right in line with,
Yeah.
with the requirements,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of them.
So does the policy,
And based on
so
discussion.
if a family member came and said, I'm upset that my kid was presented with a survey that said X, how dare you not ask me if they could be presented with a survey, but the survey was not mandatory, it's fine?
No.
Yeah.
If the survey was not mandatory and doesn't cover any one of these topics, we'll go back to Jen's field trip example. Where do you want to go on a field trip? Do you want to go to the zoo, or do you want to go to the museum? Nice and generic. That, it's not going to, in theory, wouldn't trigger any one of these 8. But if you're going to do a survey that's going to trigger potentially any one of these 8, then you have to look at, is it mandatory, do you have an opt-out, and then you've got, and the whole purpose is to give parents the advance notice, give them an opportunity to take a look at the survey if they want, and make a decision on behalf of their minor child whether they want them to participate or not. That's really what it comes down to.
Where did this list come from?
I
Right from the
just asked the same
statute.
question.
Huh?
Like,
1 through 8
Yeah.
Yeah.
is right from the statute.
Where's the statute? Again, we didn't get this one in yet, so
Yeah,
I would have read it, but
I'll include that.
Is it in the policy or?
No,
No, they're
it's,
getting it.
it's the purpose statute.
It's referenced at the end, it's the PPRA.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can, I'll send you guys all a link.
okay.
Is at the end of this policy or?
What's that?
No, he said it was referenced at the end, like on the last, I don't see that.
Oh, just the statute itself, should say
Yeah.
the pupil, protection of pupil rights amendment?
Oh, it does in the Warwick one?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
that's the one I was looking at, yep. I got the legal, I'm gonna send you guys a link that's to the, it gives you the legal site, but it's also got a general guidance document, which we used for the Warwick one.
Okay, it is 6:07, so I'm gonna recommend we hold on this one.
oh, you think? Yeah, we need more work.
Yeah.
Like, good start, but there's definitely some things we need to figure out.
Okay, is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss before I make a motion to adjourn? Going once. Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
I